All right, so the recording has started. We are doing a session on take charge of the stress. And in this session, we are going to talk about signs of stress and why it is important for us to learn about signs of stress, why it is significant, why can't we directly jump onto how we tackle stress or manage our stress. I think we're going to talk a lot about that in today's session. We're also going to learn about how the impact of stress can actually ripple into different parts of our well-being and our lives in general. We are also going to look into some of the evidence-based techniques that has been used thoroughly to actually help individuals manage their stress on an everyday basis. Also, last but not the least, what you can do right now to start actually having some kind of daily practice. It doesn't have to be an hour of sitting meditation or doing something for a substantial amount of time. It can maybe just be that 1 minute that you can practice and invest in to make sure that you are able to manage your stress every day. So we're going to look into some of those practices and how it can help us become more resilient towards stress. So there's going to, as I told you before, that I have shared a link with you on Poll Everywhere. So I'm going to stop sharing this screen and jump onto the poll. And please click on the link that I shared with you, and we can start looking at the poll right away. All right, so the poll question is, how stressed are you right now? How do you feel right now? So take a moment to click on the link and participate in the survey, and you will just type in A, B, C, or D. Mildly stressed, but manageable. Okay. Okay, most of us are experiencing mild amount of stress, but they are able to manage it. That's great. Thank you so much for your feedback there. Let me share my PowerPoint again. Great. All right, so let's talk about signs of stress. But let's start with, why do we even have to learn about the signs of stress, right? Any guesses? Type it in the chat. Why do you think it's important to learn the science behind the stress for yourself, for your individual self? I would love to learn that. Okay. So let's start with the very first bullet point you see here. It helps us to understand that stress is not solely mental and emotional. And many times this is something that I experience a lot, and I hear a lot with my audience when I talk about stress with them. Many times we think that this is something our mind makes up. It is something that we are just experiencing on a very emotional and mental level. But is that the case though? It is not exactly a mental and emotional construct. Mental and emotional experiences that we experience during we are experiencing stress is because of the fact that they are the outcomes that we see first. And so we perceive stress mostly through our emotions and our mental awareness of the stress. So that's why many times we think that way, but it is very, very much physiological in nature. And so it's very important to learn that, to actually verify the fact that this is something our bodies are meant to do. This is something our bodies are supposed to do as a result of certain challenges or threats, as well as certain, drastic situation. Any kind of certain change can cause stress response too. So whether I'm cutting my finger by mistake, or I'm touching the hot surface, or whether I'm actually experiencing a loss, I'm going to go through the same stress response that my body will. My body doesn't differentiate between a cut on the finger or a burn or even a loss of a loved one. So, stress response is very, very universal in nature. So also, why we need to learn about stress is because we need to know how it impacts us, how it impacts our entire physiology, our bodies, and how it affects our mental health and emotional health. And once we understand that, we can actually become more exploratory in nature to learn more about how we can actually navigate through the stresses we do, because not a single person can actually experiences the stress the way we do. And so it's very unique to one person to another. So it's very important to learn about science of stress because of that. The next one is about rationalizing the cues. The more you become aware of stress, the more you understand your cues of what makes you actually experience stress in certain way and what makes you actually become more aware of the behaviors you have when you're experiencing stress. So these are some things that can while learning the science behind it can make you more aware of your existing stress. All right, so this is going to be a little bit sciencey, but please let me know if you have any questions. I'll be happy to reiterate those with you. So on the left, you can see this is our little brain, our beautiful complex brain that does a lot of work for us, right? So the stress response, whenever we are experiencing any change or a threat or a challenge, our senses are the first thing that's going to give you all the signals to your brain. That's the first thing that happens. Your senses don't do the actual function of, let's say, your eyes doesn't see, your eyes only sense the message of what it sees to the brain. So the brain can make sense of everything that it's seeing. So our senses are almost like a receptor of all the messages that we sense in our world. So your senses will take on this message, they'll send it right in our brains. And then what you'll start noticing is that if you're experiencing stress or stressful situation, it's going to kick in a part of the brain that's called amygdala. We call it guard dog brain. So what do you think guard dog does when it sees something that it doesn't know or someone they don't know? What do they start doing? Type it in the chat box or turn on your, unmute yourself and you can talk about that verbally too. So the guard dog brain, basically what it does is that yes, I'm seeing a chat here. Bark, yes, you're right, absolutely. So it warns us, right? A guard dog, what they do is they warn us that, hey, there's something happening, right? That is unusual. That's exactly what this part of the brain does. It basically warns us that there is something going on that is stressful to us and we need to attend to it right away. So this first part, the numbering that you see, is actually that part of the brain. So it starts to activate because the senses have told our brain that, hey, I'm seeing something and we need to work on it. The second thing that will happen is this command center of the brain. Now, this is very important when it comes to stress response in our body and the way we react to things. This part of the brain, I call it command center. We can call it hypothalamus, whichever you choose is easier to remember, pick one. So this command center of the brain, because of this first, the guard dog brain starts to bark, the command center of the brain receives that message and it starts to prepare our body to act. When we are under stress, we are either going to fight, we are either going to flight, we are going to freeze, or we are going to faint. These are the four classic responses we humans show when we are under stress, right? And so in order for us to act that way and that quickly, we need this command center of the brain to start preparing our body, right? So the second command center starts to activate and starts to send signals to our entire body. And what happens is then it will involve something called as a reptilian brain. This is the oldest part of our brain. Many of our other animal species we share this brain with. And so what this does, it sends all the signals from this command center to the rest of your body, okay? So again, let's go back. Senses receive the message. Your guard dog brain starts to bark and make us aware of and sets off alarm. Your command center says, all right, let's prepare our body right away so that we can act accordingly. And the brainstem or the reptilian brain sends the signal through itself to channel our body to act in a certain way. So what does brainstem do? Brainstem actually starts to increase the oxygen level in our body because we We need more oxygen at that time to react, right? If you want to run, you need more oxygen. That is the reason why when we feel stressed, we also start to breathe heavily, right? We also feel our heart, pumping fast, and our heart rate go up. Also, our body temperature changes too. We mostly feel very warm at that time because the blood is circulating so much into our muscles, right? And the blood pressure increases too. All those things happen because our command center and the reptilian brain are giving us signal as that, okay, we need to prepare. This is also the time when our bodies will actually stop the process of digestion and reproduction. That is not the priority at that time. Our priority is to run or hide or freeze or faint. So these are the ways that our body actually starts to work through. And last but not the least, I do want to talk about number 4, which is memory brain. I don't have to actually talk about it, but I think this is an important thing to remember for you. The memory brain is very important because look at how close it is to the guard dog and the command center of the brain. There's a reason why it is close. This part of the brain helps us to remember things for a longer period of time. That's the center for our long-term memory, right? And so that's why we so keenly remember our stressful moments much clearly than our happy moments because of the way they are situated. And so this part of the brain is capturing everything, all the moments, stressful situations you have gone through much more clearly and for a longer period of time. And this is for good reason too, right? I mean, think about ourselves as a hunter and gatherers when we used to live in caves as a human being. We had to remember that saber tooth. What we did if we came across saber tooth, we ran or we hid, or we worked collectively to hunt the saber tooth away, right? So memory brain plays a very important role. And that's why I think it's very important to talk about it, why we remember the stressors in our life so much more clearly than anything else. And so that's very important. But there is another very, very important part of the brain I want to talk about, and that is our, wait a minute. Oops, okay. So this part of the brain, the human brain, I call it human brain because it is actually only found in humans. We humans are very smart. We know how to make right call. We always try to make the best decision we can. We are very logical and we are good in judging the situation very well. This part of the brain, the human brain, is the part of the brain that actually helps to regulate our stress responses so that it doesn't blow out of proportion, right? So we need that part of the brain to help out. Many times, however, if we are in a highly reactive state, this part of the brain, the human brain, doesn't actually work as well, and it gets overwhelmed, and then we end up being in a highly reactive stage. And so remember that, that part of the brain should be part of the equation, and how you involve that part of the brain is by actually doing the evidence-based techniques I will be actually sharing in the later part of the slide. You will still react, but you'll be more intentional in how you want to react to a situation, right? So, remember these parts of the brain. So why I'm talking about this is for us to know that stress is everyday part of our life, and we are going to experience that. And it was built for a very important function for survival. Stress is meant for our survival. However, when we started developing this stress response in our bodies, it was long time ago, thousands of years ago. It was very much needed. We needed to protect ourselves from predators. We had to be very careful on the disease and infections we experienced at that time, because we didn't have any kind of a technology or science with us at that time, right? So these responses were very, very crucial to protect ourselves and our progeny to continue. So definitely that was very important, but now we are at the point where we are continually exposed to stress for a very long period of time. And that is what is causing tremendous amount of impact to our whole humanity. I mean, we know what COVID has done for us. I mean, this is just one classic example of what we have experienced, at large as a community and as a world. So just know that I'm not trying to, put stress in a negative light. There is function for it, and there's a reason why we should be, we should acknowledge the stress response because it's very important. Think about it. I gave an example of touching the hot surface, right? So if, let's say, we did not have stress response, we would be burning our hands, or we will still be holding that hot cup of coffee, or touching that hot surface, and our skin will be burned. So thanks to our stress response, we're able to pull away and protect ourselves. This is just a small little example of why stress is important. The problem is when it becomes a long-term pattern, that's when it starts to create a lot of problems. Please feel free to enter any questions you have, or if you want me to repeat anything I just said, I'll be happy to do that. All right. So let's talk about impact of stress. So I told you that short-term stresses are good. We need them for our protection, our survival, and how to react in a certain moment, right? So let's look at some of the impact of stresses. So when you experience stress for a shorter period of time, most time you'll observe these things, and that is anxiousness and nervousness. Sweating is very common. Shortness of breath, because again, you're fending for more oxygen in your body. High blood pressure and heart rate is very, very common. Again, because our heart is trying to send blood to our muscles and joints, around the joints, so that we are able to act if we want to, right? So if we want to run, we would want those muscles to receive enough blood flow so we can run away, right? That's the reason why that happens. Hyperventilation, again, the shortness of breath, the muscle tightening, again, to prepare our bodies to react in whatever way we decide to choose. Upset stomach is very, very common at this time. Part of the reason why we feel that way is because, again, the circulation around our digestion is pulled away from the digestive system, and it's given to the muscles. So digestion at this time is not priority. Reproduction at this time is not a priority. It's a survival. So our muscles need more blood and oxygen. So that's where our attention is diverted, and our energy is diverted in our body. Also, another thing is when we are actually, stressed, we are creating a hormone in our body, which is called cortisol. And I bet many of you might have heard of that. Cortisol, one of the side effects of cortisol is, creating changes in the digestive process. That's why our stomach gets upset sometimes when we are experiencing short-term stress, or actually even long-term sometimes. And so just notice that, just see, what you experience when you are experiencing stress for a shorter time. Think about a deadline that you're trying to, fulfill your some of the tasks at. So think about that, how important that is for you. So, or what are those cues that you experience? Now let's look at the long term. The list is long here. So some of the things you'll notice when you're experiencing long-term stress for a longer period of time is headache and migraines. You're going to experience a weight gain. Some people also indulge in an eating disorder or milder form of eating disorder, in the sense that you either pull away from the food or you indulge in the food. I mean, these are the regular patterns that we all humans experience. So what is what do you tend to do when you're under a lot of stress? Think about that. Also, frequent hyperventilation, meaning you're going to experience a little bit of breathing issues if you're experiencing long-term stress. Panic disorder is another one, mostly because of the constant presence of anxiousness and exhaustion that can lead to panic disorder for some individuals. Inflammation of circulatory system, stress response, if it continues to happen, imagine your body, what it is supposed to do for a short period of time is continuing in a long cycle, continue to experience that. Your body is bound to get exhausted. It's bound to actually develop inflammation at that time. Also, increased chances of heart disease because of the inflammation, the continued inflammation. Greater risk of higher cholesterol level, again associated with inflammation, hypertension. Many times, if you have loved one or yourself, if you have a history of high blood pressure, many times your doctor will say that, take care of yourself, relax a little bit, try to engage in something that helps you de-stress a little bit. So this is one of the reasons why. Sleep disturbances are very common among people who experience long-term stress. Depression is another one, anxiety. Again, it can correspond with panic disorder when it comes to anxiety, and trouble focusing in general. You don't feel as focused on a task that you have at hand, and you're basically exhausted at all times. And so when you see all these symptoms, please be careful. Take a time to truly understand what you truly need at that time. Sometimes it's just pulling away from the stressor, or doing something constructive that helps you to divide your attention somewhere else. So I want to see in the chat box, if you can share some of the things that you notice when you're under stress. I'll appreciate that. You can enter that in the chat. It doesn't have to be all these heavier symptoms I said, but it can be just as simple as I get body aches. Like, I'll give you my own example. When I experience stress for myself, I always feel tension in my neck and my shoulders. That's one way I know that I'm actually experiencing stress. And the moment I experience that, I try to do things to help myself in managing stress. That's my cue to take care of myself. Panic disorder, okay. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else? Okay. All right, thank you for sharing that, Solomon. All right, so we are going to do another poll, and that talks about the signs. This is going to be more anonymous. So if you want, and if you did not feel comfortable sharing that, then you can do it here. Let me open the poll, activate it, and share a screen again. So here again, go back to the same link I sent you, and you can type your response there to share, what are your personal signs you notice when you're under stress. Let me know if you're experiencing any technical difficulty. You can enter that in the chat box. Let's give it just about 30 seconds. So if you have a response, you can enter it there. If not, we will move on. Oops. Okay, I'm not seeing any responses, so let's go ahead and continue our presentation. So as I already mentioned about the short-term and long-term impact of stress, what sometimes we forget is that we tend to isolate how the stress impacts our actual overall well-being. Believe it or not, stress and wellness are very intertwined in the sense that when you're under stress, your wellness or well-being is going to be compromised. And at the same time, if you're not at the fullest capacity of your well-being, it is going to add to the stress. That's going to cause the stress, right? And so basically, let's take an example here. We have different, you can see this sectioned out here. We have a different forms of wellnesses. You have physical wellness that focuses on our body. Then we have emotional and psychological wellness. It's okay. Don't worry about it. Salome, you're okay. Then we have environmental, meaning our surrounding, how they get impacted. And we have financial well-being, which is very, very important part of our life. Social, meaning our social connections, as well as occupational, meaning at work environment. So let's take an example of this. And you can unmute yourself if you want, or you can add in the chat box your response, okay? So think about this. We'll take a very simple example, a stressor where an individual has lost their job. What type of stress, how stress will impact these different facets that you see on the screen? Think about it for a second. What do you think an individual who just lost their job, what type of wellness components here will be affected because of that stress? So the person definitely will have a compromised occupational wellness, mostly because they lost their job, and that's a huge issue, right? The financial is the next one. Yes, you're correct. It can also be physical if the person is not able to find a job for a longer period of time, which leads to long-term stress, right? And of course, it is emotional. It takes emotional toll on an individual when they experience something like that. Okay, so as you can see, stress may be it may start from a very specific point, but it has a ripple effect on our entire well-being. And so understand that, if you are experiencing stress, how best you can actually try to manage stress so it doesn't have this ripple effect and this deeper impact on your well-being. All right, so now we're going to talk about managing stress. There are a couple of very, very well-known evidence-based techniques that has been used in the field of psychology and counseling. And so I want to present some of them that are more reachable, that you can maybe try doing it at home. This is not just the one list. I mean, there is still a long list of treatments that people can go for, but that needs a professional help. Some of these, like autogenic training that I'll tell you a little bit more on, is something where you need a professional help to guide you in learning how to do that. So let's start with the very first one, progressive muscle relaxation. So in this technique, what you're doing is you're engaging your body and creating an amount of tension and relaxation. And we'll do this just after I explain you this slide on how to do that technique. So this can actually help you, this tension and relaxation of the body can actually help you to create a better stress management and endurance towards the stress. It's a very, very good technique to try. It doesn't take too long of a time. So I hope you give this a try. Autogenic is a guided technique where you're allowing a specific part of your body to do something, in the sense of, let's say you're asking your legs and hands to relax, or teaching it, your heart to slow down and get calmer. And so that, again, this is a highly specialized technique, and you need a professional to teach you how to do that till you feel comfortable doing it by yourself. Guided imagery is something where, again, you close your eyes and you imagine yourself being in certain place, which is very calming and soothing to you. This can be very powerful tool, again, to de-stress. Diaphragmatic breathing is a technique of breathing you can do at any time of a day to help you to calm yourself down at the time when you're feeling a little restless or you're feeling anxious due to a stressor or a stressful situation. And the last but not the least, which mindfulness technique, mindfulness approach has been used for some time now, and it has shown to deeply impact stress levels within a variety of audiences. I actually do these programmings for my own variety of audiences, as well as I teach professionals on how to apply this concept in their work that they are doing. And so let's start a quick technique demonstration. I would want you to engage in it with me. So if you can, I want you to basically close your eyes and find yourself a relaxed position where your shoulders are relaxed, your spine is relaxed, right? And I want you to close your eyes just for a minute. And if you don't feel comfortable closing your eyes, you can just lower them to a specific point in front of you so that it creates a relaxation experience for you. All right. And so now what I want you to do is I want you to look at your hands, or just keep your eyes closed and just feel your hands. And I want you to slowly create a fist. As tight as you can, clasp your fist. And I want you to feel the tension in your fingers, the tiny little joints of your fingers, your palms, whatever it is. I just want you to experience this tension. All right. And then I want you to slowly relax your hands and open up your fingers and stretch them out. And notice the relaxation that comes from this. You can also do, okay, let's try one more time, okay? So again, create a tight fist, as tight as you can. And feel the tension. Hold it just for a moment. And now again, relax your hands. Very good. Now we are going to move to the diaphragmatic breathing. So keep your eyes closed and just follow my instructions. I want you to take left hand and place it on your chest, and your right hand right below your rib. That's where your diaphragm is. Right. And now I want you to keep the left hand to keep you stable and firm and straight. And the right hand is the one where I want you to lead your attention to. And just notice with your breath, as you take your breath with through the nose and inhale, how your diaphragm rises or expands. And then with the out breath, as the breath leaves, it falls back in the relaxed position. So I want you to take 3 deep breaths with me and just notice your right hand, and just notice the sensation you experience as you're breathing. So let's take a deep breath. And out. Again, take a deep breath. And out. One more time, take a deep breath. And out. All right, that's wonderful. Thank you for doing this exercise with me, if you're able to do it. Guided imagery is also a very good technique where you can close your eyes and imagine yourself in a place that you really find deep relaxation. And it can be a beach or a mountain or a place you have been to where you felt utmost relaxed. Go back to that place, try to remember the smallest detail in that vision to actually help you relax yourself a little bit. You're basically, through your memory, you are remembering the relaxation that you felt at that time, which can be a very powerful tool. And mindfulness approach, I will just say, if you can't do anything, just take a few deep breaths and just focus on the movement of breaths as it comes in and out. That's the best way to practice mindfulness. So there are other things that also you can do to help yourself to de-stress. And these are just ritual-based practices that you can try doing. So one of them is organize and declutter. Most of our stresses happens because we have a hard time, with maybe, fulfilling our commitments, or not being as organized, or having some declutter, having clutter around us. And so when you organize and declutter, it creates a clean space to start and work through. So see what you can do to maybe create that some space. It doesn't have to be every facet of your life, but maybe a facet that is actually giving you stress. You can use that organization and declutter to encourage yourself to feel a little bit more or less stress. Pay attention to your sleep habits. This is a big one and most neglected one. How well are you sleeping? Even if it's 6 hours of sleep, how well are you sleeping for those 6 hours? Notice that, think about that. And if you're not, then what can you do to help get sleep that you need? Sleep is a time for recovery. And so do not actually, ignore this point. It's very, very important. Moving is another one. We nutritionists and the field always talk about exercising, but I say move. And so moving means you're sitting here for almost 45 minutes. You can get up, take a walk, get the water, and come back. So that's a movement. You're breaking the pattern, and that can actually cause you to de-stress a little bit. It can also be as simple as you on your lunch break, you're going out and you're enjoying some fresh air. So just engage in the moving part if it's possible. The other one is journaling. Not everyone feels comfortable sharing their innermost experiences. Journaling is a very safe way for you to open up and create a little bit of safety net around you, and still explore your experience in a more in-depth way. Schedule for social connections. Social connections are a very powerful tool and support system that you can build around it. But sometimes, because of how busy we are, it is very, very hard to do too. And so think about how you can schedule that in your day or in your week, if possible. If you have certain good friends, set up a time for a dinner or lunch with them, and just have that good support system ready for you. Watch out for some nicotine and alcohol. Those are stressors for our body. We may not realize that they are emotionally, but for our body, physiologically speaking, they are. Set boundaries. This is a big one. Many times we commit to things, even though we know that we won't be able to execute on them. So learn to say no. When you can't do something, learn to say no. And I think this is something that we all should cultivate. In our good hearts, we do want to do a great job and we do want to help others, but at what expense? That's a very important question to ask, which takes us to a reminder on what matters and what you value. Sometimes the stress that we experience can be really unnecessary, in the sense that it is brought on to us by our choices. And so think about that, are they really important to hold on to? And so remind of what is truly important, and what you value more, and is that what you are striving towards, versus something that is maybe not as needed, but you are still doing it, and that is adding stress in your life. So think about these things. Think about what you can do to nurture yourself and to take care of yourself, because once you take care of yourself, and when you're able to manage your stress on an everyday basis, you're able to support not just yourself, but everyone around you. It is, again, as stress has a ripple effect, so does the mind that is stress-free has a ripple effect too. So encourage yourself as well as others to actually try some of these techniques to help. And at this point, I'll open a time for questions if you have any. And what I'll do is I will enter evaluation link for you that you can participate in. And it will also be emailed to you. So feel free to use that too, if you want. All right, any questions?